All right, Tess, can you hear me? Hello? Thumbs up? All right. Does that work? Oh, let's see. All right, that is great. Okay. Hi everyone. Oh my goodness. I see the comments. This is so exciting. Hello. I'll get started. Welcome. Thank you for spending a tiny bit of your Saturday with me. My name is Elaine, and I'm excited to spend some time today brainstorming an animal character together. So let's get right to it. If you have a pencil and a piece of paper to make some notes, that's great. If you just want to listen and brainstorm in your head alongside me, that's fine too. Okay, great. So I thought together today we might come up with a realistic animal character, one that might appear in a story or a novel. I'm a big fan of unicorns and sphinxes and griffins, and but we're going to put those aside and think of an animal that might actually appear here on planet Earth. Okay, so we're not going to go so far as to put this character into a story, but you definitely might feel as you do the work that you have the beginnings of a story developing. And if that's the case, I really hope, I want to encourage you to continue working on it after our workshop is over today. So I have written a novel called Milkweed Meadow, and I'm going to share some of it with you in a bit. But I want to start with a look at some well-known novels that feature animal characters. So I'll hold this. There you go. So this is by no means a complete list, but I'm hoping that some of you might recognize one or two of these books as books you've read, and you can holler in the comments if you have. The Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter is pretty famous, as is Charlotte's Web. I imagine a lot of you have read that one. Roald Dahl's Fantastic Mr. Fox is really fun. Some of these are older. The Incredible Journey, Watership Down. Scary Stories for Young Foxes is a wonderful animal novel that came out last year and just won a Newbery Honor, which is the medal you see there. So that's a terrific story too. So, and it just goes to show that animal stories are definitely timely and also timeless. So, our goal basically is to brainstorm a character that might be the hero in a book like one of the ones on this list. So it's an animal that can think and encounters problems and makes choices. So here's a list of questions we'll try to brainstorm answers to. Number one is, which animal are you going to choose and why? Number two, rules for your animal's interactions with humans and the human world. Number three, how anthropomorphic is your character? And anthropomorphic is just a fancy word that means having human characteristics. So does your animal have human characteristics, and to what degree? We'll talk about that. And how can I have fun with my animal character's voice? So those are the four questions. Okay, so we'll take the first question, which animal and why? So the first thing you have to do is to pick an animal, and there are two ways you can do it. The first way is simply by picking an animal that's meaningful to you in some way. You might have a beloved pet. You might have some beloved stuffed animals, or you might have had them when you were a little bit younger. This is Bunny and this is Lammy. They are members of our household. And so you might say, I'm going to write an animal story about a real lamb or a real rabbit. Bye-bye. You might also have studied an animal in school. You might really be fascinated by tarantulas or lizards or something like that. So that's one way, an animal that's meaningful to you. The other way you could do it is think about a character that you want to create, and think about just the personality of a character that you're interested in writing about. And then think about an animal, a type of animal that could match that personality type. So for example, if you had a character who was really high energy and talkative and maybe had difficulty making up her mind, you might choose a squirrel. right? Something that runs all around and just sort of chatters all the time. That would be a nice match. To go back to our list here, Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl is a story of a clever, sly, crafty fox who outsmarts three farmers by digging tunnels in the ground and stealing from their storehouses. So foxes are sly, stealthy, crafty animals. So it's a great choice. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about the way I made my choices, and then you can write your own answer. So here are the characters in Milkweed Meadow, and I made my decisions in using both ways. Animals that meant something to me, and I matched personality. So um, we moved, my family and I moved about 2 years ago, and in spring, I looked out my kitchen window and I saw a family of rabbits, and there were adult rabbits and there were juvenile rabbits, and I was just fascinated by them, and I loved watching their little northeastern cottontails. And so I said, I would love to write a story about these rabbits that live outside our house. Um, and so I made the protagonist of my story a rabbit. And then near our house, there is this high trellis. And on top of the trellis that year, there was a little a nest. A mom and dad robin built a nest, and we watched them lay 3 eggs, and they hatched. And so I chose a baby robin to be the rabbit's best friend. And there are deer that come by our house. So a deer made it into my story. These were all animals that had meaning for me. And finally, my husband and children fill a bird feeder outside our kitchen with seed. And I noticed how the the blue jays are very bossy. They're very sort of they want to eat all the feed themselves. They're kind of you know they sort of shoo all the other birds away. So I said, what if I make the antagonist in my story a bully blue jay named Blue? And so that ended up in my story too. I also knew I wanted to write a story where the main character was really nervous and anxious and just wanted to be brave but was really frustrated because she couldn't be brave. And so what I did was, because you think about rabbits, like I love them and I always want to get close to them, but as soon as I open the kitchen door, the screen door, they hear me and their ears go up and they freeze. And then as soon as you take one step toward them, they scamper off, right? So I thought it would really be a nice match to have a nervous rabbit in my story. Okay. And the last piece here is to give your character a name. So you're going to do the kind of character, one element of their personality, and then what is their name. And their name should suit their personality. So I named my rabbit Butternut. Okay, so Butternut, I think, is a very humble name. It's a name associated with nature. All the rabbits in her colony are named after foods that rabbits eat. So, that worked. But it's not Sparky the Wonder Rabbit. It's not Napoleon. It's not a big, grand name. But your character might be big and grand. So think about the choice of a name, which is very important. So what I'll do is I will take my list and I'm going to write my answers, and you take some time now and write your answers to which animal character and why, and then we'll come back and do the next question. Oh, and I'm seeing you all here. It's so nice to see you all virtually. All right, here we go. Let's see if that will work. Yes. So I will pick which animal and why. A young cottontail. So I wrote a young cottontail rabbit like the ones outside my window, and her personality. Nervous and fearful, but wishes she were brave. And I'll write down her name. Okay. So we'll move on to number 2, rules for interactions with humans. And this is a fun one and it's an interesting one. So, first, you have to establish whether there are humans in your stories. And in there are whether they're humans that will interact with your animal character. And I think you should say yes, because I think it's really interesting to think about how animals and humans can interact in a story. There are a few stories, like the Frog and Toad stories by Arnold Lobel, that seem to be just an animal world and there aren't any humans featured at all. But I think in every one of these, the characters interact with humans. So what you need to decide is, what is that relationship like between your animal character that you've now named and humans? Okay, is it a harmonious relationship? Is it sort of positive and peaceful, or is it antagonistic, which means there's conflict and maybe animals are afraid of the humans, or something like that. So if the relationship is harmonious, you might have an animal that actually is a pet and lives, in a house, with humans, and that's great. You might have humans are helpful to the animal. At the end of The One and Only Ivan, there are bad humans in this story, but the animals in captivity here are helped by a little girl and her father, I believe. So, so humans can be helpful in animal stories. More often, they are antagonistic. They are sources of conflict. So, for The Tale of Peter Rabbit, Peter Rabbit wants to steal lettuce out of Mr. McGregor's garden, and Mr. McGregor wants to put Peter in a pie. So that is pure conflict, right? And it actually makes for a gripping story. Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, if you remember this book, or if you've read that one, the humans are farmers and they want to plow the field in the spring and they want to go right over poor Mrs. Frisbee's home, and her son Timothy is sick. And what is she going to do? And then, to say nothing of the humans that are doing tests on rats. So that's a novel where there's a lot of antagonism, a lot of conflict between humans and animals. So think about the humans in your story and what their relationship might be like with your character. And then the second part of this, and this is really cool, is I want you to think about language. Can your animal understand human language? And can humans understand the language that your animal speaks? There are novels in which the humans and the animals cannot understand each other. There are novels in which they can. There are a lot of novels where the animals can understand each other and they have their own culture, and they can also understand humans, but the humans can't understand them. And I think that's to sort of give the reader a sense of what's going on in the animal world, and then sort of eavesdrop on the human world, especially if the human world might be dangerous in some way. Okay, so in Milkweed Meadow, a big question is, can humans be trusted? And I thought about this a lot as I wrote. So Butternut watches the little humans, the children in the house next to her meadow, next to her warren, and she thinks the children are good and she thinks they're trustworthy. And her mother and her grandmother, for very good reasons, do not trust humans. So that sort of plays out in the novel. Harmonious relationship, or is there a negative relationship? And then tell me about language as well. And I'll write my answers. Okay, so for the relationship, I wrote, Butternut likes the humans in the nearby house, but her mother and grandmother fear them. And then language. So I wrote humans and rabbits speak the same language, so rabbits and really all the animals must keep their voices down. Okay. So, number 3, how anthropomorphic is my character? Does it have human characteristics? And for this one, I'd like you to draw a spectrum, which is a line, and I'll do it right now with you. On one end of the line, you're going to put human-like, and on the other end, you're going to put animal-like. So here we have okay. So if you see that, we have human-like on one end, it doesn't matter which end, and animal-like on the other. And your job is to decide where on this spectrum, you're going to put a little mark, where does your animal character fall? All right, and I'll give you examples. All the way over here on human-like, really anthropomorphic, you'd have a character like Toad from The Wind in the Willows. Toad wears a waistcoat and a vest, and he wears human clothes, and he lives in a large mansion called Toad Hall, and he drives a motor car, and he eats people food. He's basically human, except that he's a toad. Okay? And you might say, I'm going to make my animal a little bit human-like because I want to have fun with this fanciful character, and I want to put my character in clothes, and maybe it walks upright instead of walking on all fours the way it does in nature. And I think that would be kind of fun. Okay. On the other end of the spectrum, the animal-like end, you have the animals in this novel right here, The Incredible Journey. And this novel is about 3 animals, 2 dogs and a cat, and their family leaves on vacation and leaves them with a caretaker who ends up, I think, abandoning them. So they find their way 200 miles to their original owners whom they love and want to reunite with. And they do so by using their animal instincts. So these animals don't wear clothes. They don't even talk. You just get their animal thoughts. And their thoughts are very dog-like and cat-like. It's like what a real dog would think. So this would be very animal-like and not anthropomorphic. Okay, so I'll make my little mark for you. I think my characters in Milkweed Meadow are, put it right here. Maybe they're about a quarter in, but mostly toward animal-like. So my rabbit and all of the rabbits, Butternut eats grass. She lives in a warren. She does rabbit-like things, right? She doesn't wear clothes. She walks around on all fours, but there are a few things she does that are human-like. One thing is she tells stories. Storytelling is big in this rabbit culture. So all the rabbits share stories, and that's something that rabbits don't do, humans do, right? So that pushes her a little bit this way. And then the rabbits in her colony groom each other. They have these little broken bits of comb and brush, and they stick them in their teeth, and they sort of comb each other and comb all the bugs out. And that's something rabbits don't do, right? You've never seen that. So there are a couple other ways in which they are a little bit human-like. Okay, so I'll write down, I'm going to write some notes right under my mark to sort of explain why I put the mark there, and you do the same. So make your mark and then write underneath it. Okay. Okay, so I wrote, lives in a warren, eats grass, no clothing, but tells stories, grooms other rabbits, And you'll hear about this in the piece I read, Climbs a Trellis. Okay, so the last question. This is, how can I have fun with my animal character's voice? And this is something I sort of knew about before I started writing an animal novel, but I really enjoyed the process of creating my characters' voices in this novel, and I'll tell you why. So if your character speaks, and not all do, but imagine yours does, you can do whatever you want because no one knows how a blue jay speaks because blue jays don't speak. So the blue jay in my story, Blue, the bully, has a speech mannerism where he adds the expression, is my opinion, after things he says. So he says, watch your beak or you'll be sorry, is my opinion. And what a pretty trinket, is my opinion. Now, if you had a seventh grader human character in a book say, what a pretty trinket, is my opinion, you'd say, this doesn't sound like any child I've ever met. But you don't know what a blue jay sounds like, so you can do whatever you like. And it's very freeing as a writer. It's a chance to be really creative. Okay. When I read my chapter, I want you to listen to Piper the robin's voice because I had a blast writing Piper's voice, and his voice is very distinctive as well. So you can listen for that. Now, Butternut's voice, my hero here, her voice is, excuse me, it's a folksy voice. I thought that would suit her well. It's very humble, like she is, and she uses a lot of comparisons to nature, natural metaphors. For example, she talks about her fears and her worries in her mind, and she calls them brambles. She calls them, oh, my brambles are all tangled up today. So I sort of chose that metaphor because I thought that would be the way she speaks and that would be appropriate for her. So think about your character's personality. And I want to challenge you to maybe write a line of dialogue, something they would say aloud or something they would think. And what can you do to make their voice unique? Do they, speak with a lot of exclamation points? Are they sort of gloomy like Eeyore and, have a lot of sort of sad comments? Do they begin sentences a certain way? Do they end them a certain way? Do they use comparisons like, to nature, things like that? So I'll write a line that Butternut would say, and you write a line that your character would say. So I'll say Butternut uses nature metaphors. Can you see that? Yeah. All right, so she would say, oop. All right. So I wrote Butternut uses nature metaphors, so her fears are brambles, and then her line is, I could quiet my bramble mind. It kept scrabbling toward the prickliest outcomes. Okay. So you now have a character that's taking shape here, that has a name, that has a personality, that has a voice. You've started thinking about where you're going to situate this character in the world, what their relationship like is with humans, whether they wear clothes, whether they're really animal-like. So keep your character in mind, and I'm going to share a chapter from my novel. And I especially, again, as I read, I want you to think about these last two questions, the ways in which my characters are human-like and the ways in which they're animal-like, and then also the ways, just the different characters' voices. Okay, so I am going to read you chapter 5. Okay, so this isn't the very beginning, but I'll tell you what's happened at the end of chapter 4. So Blue, the bully blue jay, has stolen um, Butternut's grandmother's comb. One of the ones I told you about earlier, where they groom each other with these combs. And this is her favorite comb. It's one of the treasures of her warren. And Blue snatches it in his beak and he flies to the top of the trellis and he leaves it there and sort of laughs and flies away. So now it's on the top of the trellis. And Butternut and her sister Goosegrass must figure out what to do next. Now I'm going to try to keep the pride out of my voice when I tell this part of the story. You're probably thinking that the comb was lost to Goosegrass and me for good, or that if we got it back, it was due to chance. A breeze blew it off, or Mother or Father First Fledge knocked it down with their wings. You'd never think that I, Butternut, performed a daring, one-rabbit recovery mission. I'll tell you where my courage came from. It came from righteous indignation. You don't have to ask anyone what those words mean because I'm going to tell you. They mean anger, the kind of anger that comes from knowing that you're right and the other creature is wrong. I didn't know I had any righteous indignation in me, but when Blue flew grandmother's comb out of reach, the only bramble branch my mind grew led to an ending in which Blue did not get away with doing something wretched yet again. Did you know rabbits could climb? It's hard, but we can, especially when we're young. If you want to see for yourself, put a loose linked wire cage around your blackberries. I dare you. Goosegrass, I commanded, go back to the warren. If someone notices I'm missing, tell them I'm visiting the cousins. I'm going to get the comb back. You? Goosegrass looked up. It's so high. I can do it quickly if you cover for me. Goosegrass opened her mouth as if to protest, but closed it again. I believe you can, she said. I'll see you in the warren. With a nod, she turned and disappeared into the opening. Even though she bungles nearly everything, you can see why I love my sister. My righteous indignation transported me to the trellis. I hopped on, my hind paws on one slat, my front paws clutching the slat above. Swiftly, I hopped to the second rung, the third. On the third rung, my indignation left me. My brambles began to unfurl like spiny fiddleheads as I took in what I was doing. You are a snatchable snack for an early-to-rise owl. You are going to slip and plummet to the ground and smash every one of your bones. Blue will return and peck your exposed back. Grandmother would say I needed a good mouthful of milkweed, that I wasn't living smart, that I should hop down, return to safety, and face my punishment. I'd been a fool to think that I, Butternut, had the mettle to pull off such a dangerous undertaking. I got 3 rungs high and turned around. It was just about the worst story any rabbit in our warren had ever told, but it would have to be my story. I was about to hop down when a voice called out to me. I feel you, Trellis Trespasser. Are you friend or foe? My head snapped up. The voice was small and faint, as if muted by dandelion fuzz. It came from the crossbars. Who's there? I asked. Above me, I could see only the robin's nest. A creature fervent for friendship and petrified of predators. I was utterly confused. Unless you're a banana, I'm not a predator. Terrific! I am not a banana. Piper No-Fledge, at your service. No-Fledge? Are you a robin? Do you think you could knock that gold comb down to me? Alas, my unidentified banana-loving friend, I am confined to my nest. You shall have to continue the climb. I'm a rabbit, I told the voice. I don't think I can do it. But you must. I am most eager to meet you. How high are you hovering? 3 rungs. And are the rungs farther apart as you go higher? No. Are the upper rungs brimming with birds? Yes. The voice had a point. I took a breath. Don't think, I ordered myself, and hopped onto the next rung. I kept going. I didn't look down. I tried to be steady and quick. My body quaked nonetheless. The voice whispered encouragements. Not long now. Keep climbing. You must be a remarkable rabbit. At last, digging my claws into a crossbar, I wriggled my hindquarters over the top rather ungracefully, if I'm being honest. I panted. There it was, grandmother's comb, right next to me. I'd made it. Hello, friend. You are magnificent and mighty, and bigger than I expected. In case you are hungry, may I reiterate that I am not a banana. Two scraggle-feathered baby robins were fast asleep in the nest of woven branches and fuzz. One scraggle-feathered baby robin was awake and looking at me. Its back was brown gray and speckled, its eyes bright. Piper, was it? I'm not magnificent, I said, still breathing hard, and I'd never eat a bird. A reassuring reality. May I ask your name? It seemed silly now, but I hesitated. I'd had my day's fill of interactions with other species. Even talking with this nestling felt like another betrayal of our warren and of grandmother's rules. But it was Piper's encouragement that had helped me reach the top of the trellis. I couldn't be rude. I'm Butternut. It's nice to meet you. Likewise, and what, Butternut, brings you to the top of the trellis? I took a breath and told the story of the two squirrels and their stuck tails, of Goosegrass fetching the warren's most valuable comb to untangle them, and of Blue stealing it. Piper listened, with his beak resting on the nest's edge. I haven't been alive long, he said when I finished, but that was the most sensational story I've ever heard. I felt as if I were there with you. For a moment, his words pleased me so much I could think of nothing to say. I realized that this was the first time I'd told a story to a creature other than a rabbit. The rabbits in Milkweed Meadow are good storytellers, I said at last. We practice a lot. You must be one of the best. I didn't know about that. Grandmother Sage did save some of her highest compliments for me when we gathered in the root room. Mother often put me first in the lineup, too. It's funny, I'm nervous about most things, but I don't have trouble sharing stories. Maybe it's because I don't spend time thinking about who's listening. When I see images and hear conversations in my head, and I find words for them that feel like truth, well, I like that feeling better than any other. I didn't know you'd hatched, I said to Piper to change the subject. Mother and father haven't told many creatures. Apparently, that jay, Blue, the one that confiscated the comb, he embezzled an egg. They're striving to keep us safe. Me and my sister Windy, he pointed a beak at one of the sleeping birds, then the other, and my brother, Beaker. I nodded. We all know what Blue did. You must be so sad. Piper twitched his head back and forth. Yes and no. I never met the bird that egg would have hatched into. My mother says that sad and sorrowful things happen in Milkweed Meadow as they do everywhere. Blue is a menace. Well, he's just one bird. The meadow is chock full of creatures. Yes, we can certainly cope with him. I looked at Piper doubtfully. You'll see once you're out of the nest. That reminds me, he chirped. Will you watch me fledge, brave Butternut? My parents say in 3 or 4 days we'll be ready. I'm so hoping I'll be Piper first fledge. Second fledge would be fine too, as long as I'm not third fledge. It would be terribly torturous to be the last one out, don't you think? Second fledges and first fledges mate with each other, but third fledges are stuck having to find third fledges. It seems a forlorn fate with which to burden my brother or sister. You get your name based on the order you fly out of the nest? Yes, I can't wait. Flying means freedom, finding my own food, gliding on billowing breezes, finally meeting all the meadow dwellers. And to think, I've already made my first friend. It was clear he meant me. I smiled. He'd soon learn the way everyone kept to themselves in Milkweed Meadow. Still, I'll admit I was curious to see him fledge, now that he'd built it up. If you fledge around dawn or dusk, I'll see you when I'm feeding, I told him. And speaking of flying, I should get going. I wish I could fly off this trellis. Going down with the comb in my mouth is going to be harder than going up. Don't climb with it. Drop it down first. The robin was young, but he had good sense. I batted it with my paw onto the lawn, where it landed with a light thump. Good luck fledging, Piper. Farewell, brave Butternut. I thought of telling him that the name really didn't suit me. My brambling fears made me one of the biggest cowards in the warren, if not the biggest. The sound of it was nice to hear, though, even for a minuscule moment. Listen to that. I was starting to sound like him. Climbing down the trellis was awkward, and I do not wish to dwell on it. I use the term climb loosely. It was more of a scramble and fall. But I landed on my bottom, and no bones broke, I'm happy to say. Are you scraped, scratched, or squashed? Piper called softly when I reached the ground. I'm okay. I look forward to my next story, fearless friend. Triumphant, I picked up the comb in my teeth and hopped home. So thank you for listening and for doing a little character work with me today. If you have created a character and you'd like to share it with me, I would love to see what you've come up with. You know, whether it's something that never goes anywhere, or maybe you put it in a drawer and take it out in a little while and say, huh, I remember this character. I might want to start a story. I'd really like to see what you've done. So you're welcome to send me a description or have an adult send it to me, and I'll give you my contact information here. You can go to my website if you'd like to email me, which is elainedimopoulos.com. The last name is often misspelled. It's Poulos. And on my website, there's a form and you can email me. Or if you want to tweet at me, that'd be great too. I'm at Elaine Dimop on Twitter. And I'd love to hear from you. And thank you for being here with me today. And happy writing. And please be well. And it's great to see you all. Thank you.